All right, we are good to go.
All right, thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the Distressed Unit Appeal Board here again today. We've had a number of meetings recently as we have a lot of important business to take care of. Appreciate everyone's attention and participation in these matters. I'm going to call the meeting to order, recognize that we have posted the agenda in accordance with the open door law and that we do have a quorum here with us today. Courtney, I know that you usually have a few introductory items just about the platform, if you want to cover those real quick.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. For everyone who is attending, just want to walk through a couple technological components of this meeting. So for DUAB members and the presenters, you all will be able to mute and unmute your lines as needed. Attendees, you will all be on mute throughout the meeting. I do ask if you encounter any issues during the meeting, please send me a chat through the chat option. And then lastly, just that this meeting is being recorded and we will post it. We posted up to our DUAB YouTube page, and then we'll put a link up onto the DUAB web page after this meeting. So it will be available today. That's it.
Great, thank you. Our first item of business today is the approval of minutes from our last 4 meetings, including the executive session held on May 21st. Those were all sent out in advance, and I trust everyone's had an opportunity to review those. Any discussion or edits for the minutes for today? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion for all 4.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the minutes from March 12th, 2020, May 7th, 2020, May 14, 2020, and the executive session for May 21, 2020.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Courtney, would you call the roll?
Paul Joyce?
Yes.
Wes Bennett?
Yes.
Tracy Brown?
Yes.
Rebecca Kubacki? And Justin McAdam?
Yes.
All right, 5-0.
All right, motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Courtney. Next up, we have an update from our emergency manager, Dr. Paige McNulty. She's here with us today to tell us how things have been going and how preparations for next year are underway. Dr. McNulty?
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yes, we've been busy getting things ready for the upcoming school year, whatever that might look like. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what's been happening over the last several months and then what we're projecting for reentry for the fall, just to kind of talk about a framework and what we're working on for reentry plans. I did want to share with the DUAB board that all of the Chromebooks have been reseated in. We did receive them all and the hotspots, and so we have them in district and they're ready to go for deployment in August when students return back to school, so we're really excited about that. And the technology department has been working very hard at putting together modules for our teachers and our parents and our students and staff alike so that they feel comfortable with using the technology. And the message we've been trying to relay to everybody is that we need to grant each other grace with learning how to teach in this new forum, myself included, learning new technology ways to share my screen and different platforms. So we've been setting up lots of professional development modules so that our parents will understand how to use the devices when they come home and our teachers as well. We did have 1,300 students attend summer school, and all of the teachers that taught summer school went through professional development on Google Classrooms and the different educational software platforms that we had before summer school started, and it was a great success. In addition, we've had 2 senior cohorts happening this summer to help our seniors who needed some credit recovery. And so as of yesterday, we have about 74% graduation rate happening. We've got 1 more cohort that will end at the end of August, and so we anticipate that that number will increase. And certainly while we're not happy with that number, we're going to continue to raise the bar It's better than where we were, and I'm very proud of the staff and the students for the work that they've been doing this summer. Along with talking about the seniors, we did have a virtual graduation. Hopefully you had a chance to see it on our Facebook page that I thought went really well. But our seniors still want to be honored in a somewhat of a in-face method if possible. So we are having a drive-through graduation on July 14th. I will give a commencement speech, and we've invited the mayor. I believe he's coming to give a speech as well. And then the students are going to drive through in a caravan and then get out of their cars one at a time and be able to receive their diplomas and balloons and all the stuff that they should be celebrating in this milestone in their life. So we're happy that that's happening soon for them. We did, going back to summer school, want to tell you that we did order STEM kits for the students for summer school because we recognize that sitting in front of a computer, as you guys probably have already noticed, is very hard 4 or 5 hours a day. And so we want to try to incorporate as much hands-on project-based learning still that we can. So in addition to sending home laptops for all of our students for the summer, we did order them STEM kits. And when they came to pick up their laptops, they also got a kit that went home with them. And the teacher then did interactive lessons with them with their kits. And that was a huge success. And we're going to continue to do that for the fall. We are actively working on our enrollment campaign. We've got billboards up in the community. I don't know if you've had a chance to see some of the signs that we've been posting. We've got yard signs that are going out. We've got our face liaisons as well as our secretaries who've been personally calling all of our parents. And in addition, we have enlisted 4 student ambassadors this year that are working with us to help talk to kids talking to kids about what are the great things that are happening in the Gary Community Schools and why you should come to our school. And so they were actually on the radio with me this past week. They did a phenomenal job, so I hope that you'll be able to see them again on one of our media platforms because they're doing a great job promoting the Gary schools and talking to other students about the things that we have to offer. So they'll be going around helping us with the campaign. We're currently at about 64% students enrolled already for the fall, which is better than where we've been in the past. So we're going to continue to aggressively work on that enrollment campaign to get our numbers higher. We did send out a survey to our families and to our teachers to talk about the reentry plan and to talk about, what they were feeling as far as coming back to school in the fall. And I have also been attending the weekly now superintendent's forum, if you will, that is a collaboration of Porter County and Lake County superintendents to talk about drafting what we're going to do. And I can tell you that plan has changed 50 times since we started maybe a month ago. Where we have landed as of yesterday, Porter County kind of peeled off and developed their own plan after we came up with a framework, and Lake County superintendents peeled off and have developed their own plan because our needs are different, seeing that Lake County still is a hot spot and we have different demographics. Both counties are going to have one united plan so that there's not one district dangling out there by themselves, and so that we have unity with our plans. We have also been meeting regularly with the Lake County Health Department. I also have been meeting regularly with the Gary Health Department, Dr. Walker, and getting blessings from both those departments on our reentry plan. And at this point today, the reentry plan framework entails that we will offer a traditional brick and mortar opening in the fall in August. We will also offer parents an option if they want to opt into an e-learning platform or traditional, because we recognize that some parents might want to keep their students home because of having a medically fragile student or they don't feel comfortable, and that is certainly okay, and we understand that. We also recognize that some parents are okay with their students coming back to school, they need to get back to work, whatever those situations are, and we're okay with that too. With that being said, they have to opt into coming to school, traditional brick and mortar or e-learning for the entire semester for several reasons. One being that we have to adhere to a very strict, I'm trying to think of the word, a seating chart, sorry, I'm tired. Seating chart for the bus, and for the classrooms and cafeteria, so that if someone does become infected, that they can do contact tracing. So we can't have kids opting in one week and out the next week. We are also going to be doing all grab-and-go lunches so that everything is disposable and spacing out as much as possible. All students will be facing forward. Teachers will be wearing a mask. Students will be wearing a mask. We are being very cognizant and working with our local special ed directors as well as our own to talk about how to meet the needs of our special needs students by ordering clear masks for many of those teachers, because we recognize that a lot of those students need to see facial expressions and be able to see the teacher's mouth as they're talking. So we're making allotments across all platforms of our students' learning. So that's kind of our reopening plan. Of course, there's lots more that goes with that. It's about a 35-page document, but that's the general idea of it. And we're planning as a Lake County superintendents to send out one memo with all of our names on it, as well as one plan within the next 10 days, so that our parents will have ample time to understand and be able to digest it. We will certainly, I'll do a virtual webinar. I want to do some town hall webinars so our parents understand exactly what this means and have some, good information so they can make the decisions for their families. We have also been working on developing some sort of an academic report card, if you will, that I can share with the community and share with the advisory board, share with this board going forward. And our plan is to have some sort of a data dashboard after school starts that will be able to share academically how we're progressing in math and English and with our formative assessments throughout the year. And we've been doing lots of professional development, and we'll continue that with our teachers so that they can take the pulse of their classroom and see where those kids are with their growth points. And it also then gives us the information so that we'll know where to wrap our resources and our interventions going forward. So please look to that in the future. I did meet with the union yesterday. We had a great meeting, and I want to thank them for their help and their collaboration. We did solidify the school calendar for next year, and then again, that will be posted next week for our families and our teachers. And let's see if there's something else I wanted to share with you. Sorry. And we have successfully started our sports programs as far as following IHSAA guidelines and our reentry for practicing. No games at this point, but they are practicing along with the other schools on the field, practicing social distancing.
Thank you, Dr. McNulty. Appreciate you being here. I appreciate all the hard work you've been doing. It's I'm sure a very busy time for you. So appreciate the update. One question that I had about the reopening plan, when you talk about the virtual instruction option, what will that look like for students this year? Obviously, last year it all came as a surprise, and you guys did a great job of adapting quickly. But obviously, we didn't have as much time to plan for that this time, with the benefit of some experience and timing. How will it be different, and what do you expect that will be?
Yeah, good question. I think it's going to look a lot different. And again, I'm super proud of our teachers going from zero e-learning to being catapulted into completely virtual learning at this point, and they've done a great job with it. How I foresee it looking in the future, and I again spoke with the teachers union yesterday, is we're planning on using some of our CARES money to purchase new smart board technology for some of our smart boards. Some of our newer smart boards, and I'm probably using the wrong older term, I think they're called interactive smart boards now or something. But anyway, some of our new boards have the capability to be transformed into this new platform that I'm going to share with you. And what it does is it just videotapes the teacher in the classroom and blocks out the audience. So for HIPAA purposes, nobody will be able to see anybody else in the classroom. So our expectation is if a student opts into e-learning, for example, and they're a high school student, that they log on in the morning at their regularly scheduled time. So let's say they have geometry first hour. The expectation is that they're up and logged in at 8 o'clock in the morning for that geometry class, so that the teacher then turns on their camera and they're seeing the actual lesson in real time. The teacher can see who's logged on his or her computer. and following along, because we recognize that our teachers have to still teach all day, and it's not fair for them to have to go home and then manage the e-learning portion of it. Kids aren't doing their e-learning until 6 o'clock at night. So we want them logged in during the day and following that lesson in real time, and then they can assist that way. We also recognize that we might have some staff members due to health concerns who might not be able to come back as well. So we're going to have some e-learning teachers designated by grade level that can work from home and manage some e-learning platforms across the district for us that way.
Great. Well, so for students who are participating in sort of the classroom work, will they be able to interact with the teacher through that platform?
Yes.
Excellent. Will that be across the district for all grade levels, or will there be a different? Will you handle it differently for different grade levels?
We are working with the teachers on that right now. We anticipate using that definitely for middle school and high school. We need to explore it some more for the elementary, and I know that we have partnered with some of our neighboring districts to flush that out for how we're going to handle it for elementary.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Are there other questions for Dr. McNulty?
I had one. This is Rebecca.
Yep.
You said you sent out a survey. What percentage of the surveys did you get back?
We got several hundred back. I can't tell you the percentage, but several hundred back. But from the ones we got back, about 30% of the parents said that they were interested in keeping their students home for e-learning at the beginning of the school year. I can tell you that we have been summoned to a meeting at the Lake County Health Department on Tuesday. This happened yesterday. The Lake County superintendent, that is. So the plans could change. And so what I keep telling the teachers and the administrative team and everybody is the theme of the year is going to be nimble. We need to be nimble and help each other, because as this evolves, we might need to change in mid-gear. But I feel much more confident that we're able to do that because we've been through it a little bit now, and we're much more prepared.
Do you expect to have your full teaching workforce with you, or most of your teaching workforce, or do you have a sense of that yet? You do? Yes. Great.
The indication from the union yesterday was that they were anticipating a small number of people that needed to stay out. The rest would be there.
And any concerns about enrollment? I know we've heard across the state, a number of schools are trying to figure out, will all of our students come back? I know the virtual option is certainly one way to address that. Do you expect that your enrollment numbers will stay relatively constant based on what you're seeing so far, or do you expect a dip?
Oh, I think we're going to see a constant.
Great. Other questions for Dr. McNulty before we move on?
I forgot to mention, Justin, I'm sorry, that we did receive approximately $4.7 million for the CARES, from the CARES grant, and we have had that approved. We did allocate our fair share that we had to with the non-public schools, which was approximately 20 schools. And then the rest of it, some of it we designated for things that we needed, such as, ongoing mask replacement every month, hand sanitizers, the foggers, that type of stuff. But we do have a portion of it that we've set aside, because you don't have to designate all of it, and it has to last us till 2022. So we've designated about $2 million of it so far, and the rest is sitting for unforeseen things that we might need in the future. I know the governor has also released a $61 million grant across the state for other things that schools might need as related to the COVID, and certainly we're making application for all of those funds as they come along.
Will you be, in terms of PPE for all your students, maybe you touched on that, is that something the school will be providing or will have available for students who don't otherwise have their own?
Yeah, so what we're doing this summer is we're putting together a kit for every student. And in the kit, they'll get a little bag. We'll have 2 masks that will provide them, hand sanitizer, a thermometer, and a wellness checkoff list that was developed with the health department. And we're going to send that home with their Chromebooks when they come for their pickup of their Chromebooks before school starts. And we will also, if a student shows up to a bus stop and they don't have a mask, we're going to have masks on the bus and offer them masks, but the expectation is all students have to be wearing a mask as well as the staff member. If a student refuses to wear a mask, certainly we'll talk with their families, but if they continue to refuse to wear a mask, then they are choosing the e-learning option because we can't compromise on the safety of staff or students.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you very much for being here. We'll move to our next item of business today. The next item is the consideration of the Common School Fund loan suspension request and the School Improvement Fund plans for Gary Community School Corporation. Before I turn it over to Eric to give us an overview of the work that's been done on this, and Amy Marsh is also with us, I'd like Courtney to just introduce this item for us. It's a little more complex than some of our traditional items in that there are a few moving parts here that we need to address separately. So Courtney?
Great, thank you so much. Yes, there are a few different components to this particular agenda item, and so I think it makes sense for us to take these kind of in pieces. We'll have MGT go ahead and provide their presentation, which will cover various aspects of this. But then as we get into discussion, we can break it down into the pieces of it. So a couple of things that are included in this agenda item. First, we are looking at a request to suspend Common School Fund loan payments. And with that, then also consideration of a recommendation to the State Board of Finance regarding extending the term on those loans, assuming DUAB does vote to suspend those loan payments. So that would be the first topic under consideration. And then from there, the other key item that MGT will be presenting is their plan for the School Improvement Fund. They've done a lot of work on that plan. And so after that, what we can do is also then talk through further what they've presented in terms of the plan, ultimately looking to actually provide a recommendation as to whether to accept that plan. And then along with accepting the plan, a couple of other components to it. One would be how often we are wanting the team to come back to us and provide us with an update on that plan. And then secondly, assuming all of those approvals are done, the statute calls for DUAB to approve all of the expenditures of the School Improvement Fund. So the last thing I'd like to do under this agenda item would be to have just a general discussion about how that could work. I don't think we have to finalize that today, but I'd like to gather everybody's thoughts and then work to prepare a policy for our next meeting that you all can review and approve, and we can ensure that we're meeting everybody's needs with that process. So with that, I think MGT is able to provide us with an update.
Great, thank you. And we have Amy Marsh and Eric Parrish here from the MGT team. I'll let you guys take it over.
Thank you. Courtney, will you tell me how I can share my screen with the group?
Let me go ahead. I need to make you the presenter. To presenter. All right, you should be presenter now, and you should now be able to go up and under the share option, you can share a file or probably share the PowerPoint program is going to be your best option.
Great. I'll do share my screen. So what I am walking through here is just a high-level overview of the plan itself that I believe everyone has. So this is just really a way to walk through these items and have conversation around each. As Courtney shared, we are looking to lean into the House Enrolled Act 1065 that allows us to develop the School Improvement Fund with the suspension of the Common School loan payments. Over 4.5 years, we anticipate roughly $25 million being available through the School Improvement Fund. Obviously not all at one moment. So we hope to expend those funds as they become available to us. in advance of developing this plan, we did quite a bit of outreach to stakeholders across the community, including parents and students and teachers. And we put in front of them a list of items that has been generated by our team, particularly led by Matthew Howard, who's the Director of Operations for Gary. We asked all those stakeholders to consider each of the following potential projects and to add to that list of projects should they have any thoughts on what we may have missed. You'll see here that overwhelmingly the projects include kind of structural elements, roofing, boilers, chillers, but there were a couple of other things noted. So we have attempted to include a combination of structural elements along with kind of the beautification projects or projects that would create appealing environments, appealing learning environments for all of our students. So we've developed this plan kind of considering each of those things, along with the allowance to use funds to demolish unused buildings. The plan considers 8 phases over the 4.5-year period with regular updates with Gary's Mayor Prince throughout each of these phases. Today, I think we want to really focus on phase 1, which will be initiated this summer. And what are the key things that we'd like to start with immediately? I say focus on phase 1 primarily because we appreciate that as each phase unfolds, we will learn new things, and different dollar amounts will be available to us, and different activity will be underway. For example, I think a roof at West Side will last over a number of phases, and its completion may affect our ability to execute different parts of the following phase. So I said that really ineloquently, sorry, but the point is we'll come back to this board regularly. As Courtney mentioned, the frequency will be kind of up to all of you in this moment to say, here's what has happened and here's what we've been able to execute, and here's how we may look to modify the next phase as we go. One such modification I'll share with you is not in your plan, but I'll put it in front of you in this moment. We have received a bid on a playground at Beveridge, and this was original in your plan that you received earlier this week. That was in phase 2. I believe that's something we could move to phase 1 now because we've received a quote on that, and it would certainly enhance the experience for all students at Beveridge if we could move that up and potentially execute before the start of the school year. Finally, the plan includes a number of ways in which we will communicate all of these updates. We will have a control budget that we post on the website, and we update regularly. We will plan to share all of our updates through social media and through the website, and we intend to put signs in the front of each building in collaboration with our graphic arts program at the Career Center to create a sign that's really engaging and shares with everyone who enters the building the exact projects that have happened in that building. So before I open to questions, I want to share one other important factor, and that is my colleague Rob Tanner, who I believe is on the call with MGT, Rob, we are hoping to have serve as our project manager for all of this work going forward. Rob came to us most immediately from Louisville School District, which I believe is the 16th largest district in the country, where he ran operations. Rob has a lot of depth of knowledge in this space, and we're really excited to have him on the MGT team and are going to access his expertise throughout this project.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation and the thoughtful work that went into this. I'd like to kick off with Paul Joyce. He has a question. I'll let him go ahead.
Thank you. Amy, as you go through this and as you look at the contracts and you look at different things, what are you doing to ensure that contracts are first going to local minority-owned businesses?
Well, we haven't engaged in any contracts yet. So I'll tell you that, that work has not happened. But certainly with Rob's leadership, that will be something that we do as we release every RFP or request for quotes. We will look at those and give those good consideration.
But you did say you just received a bid for work on a project. So did that bid come from a local minority-owned business?
I don't know. If Matthew Howard is on the call, he received that. I don't know.
I mean, I think you need to reach out to the locals and see if they can do the same work for a similar cost before we even consider a bid that comes from outside of the community.
Thank you. Great point. I apologize. We did release an RFQ for playgrounds, and I believe we received only one response. So I'm not sure if that response is local.
But what is your plan to reach out to those that are local to see that they do have access to the bidding opportunities that are going to exist through this program? I mean, we can always issue and say we didn't get a response, but we can also reach out to, and I think we need to make sure we're reaching out to and giving opportunities within that community before any considerations given outside of that community.
That's a good point. Thank you. I think, I welcome your recommendations on how we can execute that. I think Matthew Howard, who's the Director of Operations, is very dialed into local providers and has been doing quite a bit of outreach with all of them to let them know things are coming. Roofing and HVAC in particular, he's been talking with locals to say, these things are on the horizon. We're going to be doing these things in the near future. We'd like to engage locally.
Justin, what is going to be the process for determining who gets those bids? Are we going to participate in that, or is that solely going to be an MGT decision?
As it's set forth in the statute right now, it's our obligation to approve the expenditures, but the actual identification of the contractors does not necessarily come through this board. I think your points are well taken, and I think that is something that Courtney could work with the team on, and we'll be able to work with the team on developing that process for how we will go through the bidding process and work with them to identify an appropriate process that takes account of the various factors, and then bring that back before the board.
Thank you. I think that would be a good approach.
This is Rebecca. I want to just sort of echo what Paul has said. If you want to be a part of that community, you've got to reach out to the community. And I know the state has a website of minority-owned businesses. That's an easy way to track that down. But I just think that's almost an essential, that we have to reach out to the community.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we need to make that a priority. That's clearly been a priority from the legislature throughout this process, in the hiring process of identifying individuals for key positions to look to the community. That's certainly something that we as a board, and I know Courtney has worked closely to emphasize with the team, and I know something that NGT has made a priority as they've attempted to fill positions throughout the district and identify people to work with on contractual projects as well. So it makes sense only that we would continue that here as well. I know that Representative Smith has joined us, and I know he's joined us by phone, so I want to take a moment to see if he has any questions for Amy or Eric regarding this issue.
Actually, give me a minute, Justin. I need to identify which line he is on. So we have 3 call-in users. I'm going to unmute their line one by one. Representative Smith, just go ahead and keep talking, and we'll figure out which line is you. So here's the first one. Representative Smith, are you there? Hello? Yeah. Next line. Representative Smith? Hello? And one more. Representative
Yes,
Smith, are you on this line?
Smith.
There
Yes,
we go. We found
I'm
you.
on the line. Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I will keep you unmuted on our side. I would ask that from a background noise perspective, if you encounter any of that, please just mute on and off on your phone. And then I'll just leave you unmuted on our side.
I got to do it. Yes, this is State Representative Smith. I've been on since the beginning. I had to come off for a period of time in order to be able to text Courtney to let her know I was on the line. I had questions I wanted to ask of Dr. McNulty, and the chair could not hear me. So if I may backtrack to that portion of the meeting, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, that would be fine. Go ahead and ask the question.
I'm on the line talking. Listen, I had several questions for the Dr. McNulty, and my first question dealt with the ambassadors that I heard they did a great job. But I was wondering why we had ambassadors on there that were, one young lady said that she used to go to Emerson School of Performing Arts, but she was at a charter school now. Why do we have a student like that on as a Gary ambassador, student ambassador?
We have put out publication trying to seek out students that we thought would be good representatives of our school, and so we had a committee that chose those students. So I can't exactly answer that question. But
they're not representative of our school if she's going to get online and say she's at another school. That's not a representative of our school.
I can't answer that question. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, it needs to be explored and remedied. The next thing, you talked about the virtual graduation. With the virtual graduation, you said you were going to speak and the mayor was going to speak. What happened with class presidents and valedictorians and salutatorians?
Yes, sir. They're also going to. They did a video and they spoke, but for social distancing purposes, these students are going to be pulling up in their cars, and so the mayor and I are going to tape. The mayor and I are going to tape another commencement speech, and then as they pull up in the cars, we'll simply be handing them their diplomas along with the advisory board.
Okay. When people are speaking with their masks on, with the brick and mortar portion of next year's experience, sometimes you cannot understand the students. You can't understand people rather speaking with those masks. How are you planning to deal with that situation?
So the guidance that we've been given is that when the teacher is speaking, he or she is allowed to pull their mask down as long as he or she is 6 feet away. So we are in the process of Xing off in the classroom where the teachers need to speak, as well as putting tape down so they know not to cross that tape line for proximity purposes, and they'll be able to pull their mask down and speak, or have those clear masks so you can see through and see their mouth. And then students can pull their mask down in class to get some air, as long as the teacher is the only one speaking. And then when they speak, they're supposed to pull their mask down and put it back up. We also are trying to plan on being outside when we can. So we've been talking with the teachers about there's nothing wrong with going outside to do a reading lesson or a science lesson, so while weather permits. And we're going to utilize every ounce of space within our buildings to spread out as much as we can. So libraries and gyms and cafeterias and those types of things as well.
Okay, since you have two forms of instruction going on for the next year, are your faculty needs going to increase? Because if you've got students in school and students who are at in that class and at the same grade level and they're at home, who is attending to the online portion if you've got a teacher who's in a face-to-face class setting?
So again, we're going to try to utilize the new smart board so that the students will be seeing their teacher in real time deliver that lesson. And then for our teachers who might not be able to return for a variety of reasons, we're going to designate them as specifically our e-learning teachers to capture any other students that might need assistance. So we'll have e-learning teachers who don't return, and they'll be assigned grade level bands so that they'll also be delivering instruction for students who might not be able to get onto that other platform that I just described.
Last year we had a virtual education scandal, and it was proven that many of the students were logging on but were not actually being instructed and were not actually paying attention to the instruction. Over the summer, I've been distributing periodically food for the community. And last Thursday, I was with several boys that were helping. They were serving as volunteers as well. And they were laughing about the fact that they post up their picture or they've mastered the system and that they are not really paying attention to the instruction. How are you going to address that?
Well, I guess that would be the same as if they're in class and just sitting and not paying attention to instruction. So we're going to have to continue to educate our students that they need to be actively involved. The teachers will be able to see if they're posting their assignments back and forth online and continuing to reach out to parents to educate them on making sure students are staying actively involved. But it's going to be contingent upon that relationship between the teacher and the student, and teacher and students taking some responsibility for their learning as well.
Well, some of these students don't value education, so you have to sort of, in spite of them, motivate them and keep them engaged. I just wanted to make the point that, we've got a different kind of student in Gary, some of them, and I'm saying all of them. I don't use one brush to negatively swipe all the children, but we've got a lot of them who you must keep them on task.
Correct. We're working on developing some modules to keep the lessons interactive and as I shared before, like the STEM kits. We're going to be sending home kits for lots of different of our classrooms so that the students have manipulatives at home. So we're going to be trying to do things that are more interactive with the YouTube so that we've tried to make it as fun as possible, because I completely get it. As I've shared many times, I've got 2 10-year-old twins at home trying to do e-learning, and it's very difficult. So trying to keep it as engaging as possible will be a challenge for all of us, but we're going to continue to do it. And we're doing that by collaborating with other districts and building banks of lessons that we can pull from with ideas, because we're all in this together and we're all learning this together, this new platform.
I wonder real quick, I know Paul Joyce and his team at the Board of Accounts has had a lot of engagement on this virtual school issue, and I wonder if he might have any observations to offer from that experience and how that's.
Yeah, I might. I don't know the kind of software that you utilize, but when we do CPE for our work, for it to qualify as live instruction, we have to per hour get 3 feedback comments from those that are actually viewing it. So it's a simple question to go out and say, what is the weather like today? They answer, you document it. They now are known to be there in the class and participating in it. Other samples are one where you give out a code word or a code letter during that specific time, and then following that hour or time frame, they send those codes off to a certain place where they get documented. A lot of times it can be done through SurveyMonkey or any of the other kind of applications like this. So I think there are platforms out there to go that you can identify that the students are engaged, and of course, we want to have them engaged. So that's just a suggestion that you can look at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I need to know, did you do any evaluation of the e-learning that went on in the spring session of Gary Community School Corporation? Was there any evaluation from the teacher standpoint as well as the student standpoint as you are planning for the fall?
That was included in the survey that we sent home this summer about how they felt the e-learning went. We did send that home to our parents, definitely.
Okay, but I got a lot of complaints in grocery stores and drugstores concerning the e-learning process for Gary. A lot of complaints.
Well, again, it's something we're going to continue to build upon and grow. It was new to all of us. We went from 0 to 100 in 2 weeks. So we acknowledge we've got room for growth, and we're going to continue to get there.
Okay. My last question at this point is for notification of parents of your town hall meetings, what modes, what methods, what vehicles are you going to use to get that word out? Because all of them are not on Facebook or are using electronic media.
Yeah, we always send it out through, again, those media outlets that you just mentioned, as well as robocalls. We also distribute that information out through our Monday meal delivery at all of those meal sites. And Chelsea's wonderful at getting the word out many different ways.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. McNulty.
Yeah, Commissioner Bennett, just one moment. I believe Senator Brown also has a question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I think my other question was asked about the teachers coming back, but along this line of questioning, this doesn't pertain to Gary, but it was about the e-learning issue with schools here in Fort Wayne, and I think it's going to be an issue throughout. And it's a difficult topic to discuss, but because the children are home and taking classes at their own pace, so to speak, not all at once, and say 9 a.m. class time, there seems to be a strong issue with cheating. And I'm just curious how you, and I appreciate Paul's point about making them check in. That certainly is helpful to show that they're actually in class. But how are you putting safeguards around that? One kid finishes the quiz early. All the kids know that because that sort of information is posted online where everyone is. And then what happens? Or even if it's not posted, that they're finished already. How are you going to prevent that? And that's not an issue unique to your school system by any means.
Sure. So again, we're trying to do, that's why we're having them do the class in real time so that they're not doing it at 6 o'clock at night and having the information done and then sharing it with their friends. So as best we can, they have to be logged into that class in real time. So that will limit the amount of exposure, if you will, that they'll be able to text or share with their friends because they're getting the lesson, everybody at the same time only.
So that will always happen then. The testing, that sort of thing will always happen in real time. It's not you have 3 days like a take-home sort of. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too have some concerns about the distance learning. I know it's a real challenge, but Dr. McNulty, if I could go back real quickly to the list of your accomplishments. One of them, I think number 2, that you listed, that you implemented a committee to interview and hire a new athletic director. Congratulations on that. That's a homegrown man there that I think is probably a fit for you. Could you talk real quickly about the makeup of that committee, how you implemented the committee and the makeup of the committee?
Sure. So generally, I don't sit on any of those committees, the hiring committee. So I asked the high school principal to be on the committee, and then he formulated the committee with other administrators, meaning of the one that was filling in as our athletic director last year, our interim athletic director, and several other folks from the high school. And then they made a recommendation to me.
So there were no parents on the committee?
There was not.
Okay. You've also mentioned that you're active in working actively to on enrollment for the fall. You've re-enrolled 53% of the students. Do you know where you stand in comparison to this time last year? Where does that 53% stand in year over year?
I don't know. Eric, do you happen to know?
I do. And before I answer that, was it 63% or 53%?
53.
So when the report was submitted, Mr. Bennett, was 53, but as of today, we're at 63.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify. Every day there's an uptick. Yeah, we're running about 10% ahead of where we were last year.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. And then a few bullet points below, there's a quote-unquote reentry committee. Again, could you speak quickly about how you formulated that and who was on it?
So the reentry committee has been made up of administrators, and they have all been tasked with whatever their department needs were. So we had special ed committee, we had a busing committee, we've had an elementary committee, et cetera, working on what they needed specifically for their areas, and then we would come back together. So they were working with neighboring districts on what they were all doing as far as busing needs or special ed needs, and then we would come back together and kind of reflush out the plan again, and then we met with the union and walked through the plan with them to get their input, and then we'd go back and meet with the superintendents and flush through it one more time. So that was our committee and our process.
And the committee was made up of strictly Gary Community School employees?
Yes.
Okay. You
And the
provide.
health department.
I'm sorry?
And the Gary Health Department.
Okay. You talk in your curriculum report about continuing education through a combination of e-learning platforms. If I were a student at Gary Community Schools, would I have to learn Google Classroom plus Edmondo plus ClassDojo? Is it to your advantage to use so many different platforms, or is that cumbersome to have to know so many platforms?
Many of them they've already been using, and they used them as well this summer. Google Classroom across the board is new as far as us using it across the entire district. We had pockets of teachers that were already using that, but now everybody's going to be using that. So that's why we're putting together modules with our IT department, and the students will all get learning platforms through our online learning modules for them, as well as their parents and teachers. So we're going to have those weekly built into their lessons.
Okay.
We tried to streamline the platforms.
Okay. Summer school students got Dell laptops. Why were they not issued Chrome?
We just received the Chromebooks this week.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one additional question, if I may.
Yeah, if we could keep it brief, I do want to make sure we move back to the agenda items that we need to take a vote on today.
I will. My question is, how are we progressing on trying to get 100% of the Roosevelt student population to become part of the Gary Community School Corporation again?
So we have reached out to all of those students multiple times. We've been calling them. We've sent them letters. We've done a virtual open house for them. We've taped several messages so they could see what we have to offer and what services that we might be able to share with them. We have actively enrolled many of those students, and we have hired many of those teachers as well, so that they'll have a familiar face when they come to Westside. And many of those Roosevelt teachers have also enrolled in the IUN program that we've offered for the licensure.
Excuse me for interrupting. I want a number or a percentage.
I can't tell you the number today. I will get that for you, though.
Okay, and my concern is, when I look at that pocket of money, that can make a big difference when you multiply 200 times approximately $8,000. That's a big pot of money that Gary Community School Corporation needs. I've suggested to you, to Chelsea and several others, that we need to personalize the approach on reaching out to those students, just like they do when a coach is out trying to recruit a basketball player or a football player. We've got to personalize it. I've suggested that we get some influencers in the community. To do that, we need those students and you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. There's none of us as smart as all of us. There's none of us as strong as all of us. There's none of us as rich as all of us. You've got to bring the community in this process. And there are people who are willing to do that.
Thank you, Representative Smith. I do want to, I think we've had a good discussion. This was definitely worthwhile that we come back to these topics. I do want to turn back, though, to the discussion of House Enrolled Act 1065 and the discussion of extending or suspending the Common School Fund loan payments, and also the plan for spending that money for capital improvements. Does anyone have questions regarding the plan that was put forward or the loan suspension itself?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear that because I had to get off the conference call in order to start texting Courtney to let her know that you weren't hearing me. So I was not privy to that. I don't know if you have time to give me a thumbnail, a symbol of that, what was said, but I didn't hear anything because I was off the line at that point.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So largely the presentation was just a recitation of what was in the packet, laying out the process of reaching out and engaging with a number of community stakeholders, from parents, students, elected officials, and other community groups across.
I'm more concerned about the common school loan suspension. That's what I want to know about. Yeah.
So I don't know that we touched on that in great detail. I think if you had a question, why don't we just move to that?
Well, the question is, how much are we requesting? Is it going to? Have you already given a blessing from DUAB, or where is that?
So that is one of the. We have several items we need to consider today. One is the consideration of whether to suspend those loan payments. The question of whether to modify the repayment schedules is one that belongs to the Board of Finance, but we can make a recommendation to them. The other item for us is then separately the consideration of the plan for how to spend the savings from the suspended loan payments, or the freed up dollars here in the interim. And then a couple other items, more administrative items, around how to handle reporting and oversight on the back end.
Chairman.
No approval at this point of the suspension of the loans.
Chairman, if I can jump in, and Eric also, you can as well. But I would like to provide a little bit of context on the request for the suspension of the common school loans. So I think there are a couple of things that are important for us to keep in mind through this process. First, DUAB has actually had the ability to suspend the common school loans since 2017, of course. Sorry, tornado siren is being tested. So we have had this ability. I'm going to pause, and Eric, let you go ahead and talk.
Yeah, hey, I'll pick up where you left off. So in the original legislation, there was language that allowed the agency manager to request suspension of common school loans. We looked at this multiple ways and never came up with a viable answer. And it has to do with debt service, property taxes, property tax caps, and debt levy. And put all those pieces on the chessboard, it just didn't work out that it was in Gary Community Schools' best interest to go forward with a common school loan suspension. And I use that term very deliberately. That's the language, suspension. It's not a forgiveness. It's not eliminating the loans. It's a pause in repaying those loans. And in effect, we're continuing to make payments. Those payments are just redirected into the school improvement fund. What happened was Senator Melton from Gary and his staff figured out the solution, and that is to continue to make the payments on the common school loans. And it's not every common school loan, it's only those loans approved by DUAB. So there's a few common school loans that were approved prior to DUAB that will continue to be repaid on an ongoing basis. Senator Melton and his staff figured out the plan was we could continue to make the same payment, and so we don't affect the debt levy and property tax collection over time. in a negative way, but yet those funds are redirected into the school improvement fund. So at the end of all of the process, we'll have built a fund of about $25 million. We're paying into that, what we're paying now in some common school loan repayments. And then the term of the loans, based on State Board of Finance approval, would just then be extended. So the net cost stays the same. They're interest-free loans, so we're not increasing the interest cost. We're just picking up those loans and moving them into the future. We continue to make payments to build this fund. Fund builds about $470,000 per month. That's the amount of the payments that would be suspended. And it lasts for 4.5 years, and that's where the $25 million comes from. Courtney, are your sirens off? You want to jump back in?
Yes, they are. Thank you. Yeah, that was you made some of the exact points I was going to make. I do want to hit again on this idea that we are only looking at the loans that have been given out by DUAB or have been approved by DUAB really since 2015. So there are 9 common school loans there. As Eric mentioned, Geary Schools does have 4 additional common school loans, what I typically call traditional common school loans. Those loans are interest bearing, and so as we were going through the legislation, trying to figure out how to factor in that interest cost into this process wasn't really working and really started to take away from some of the benefit of this legislation. So for the purposes of consideration today and ultimately what we would take also to State Board of Finance for their consideration, we are just looking at the interest-free loans that have gone through DUAB since 2015. And then just one other point on the State Board of Finance. So the way that this particular statute is written is a little bit odd in that DUAB has the ability to suspend the loan payments, but because the agreement on the loans is actually between State Board of Finance and Geary Schools, in terms of then extending the term of the loans for the amount of the length of time of the suspension, we actually do have to go back to State Board of Finance to ask them to approve an extension of the term. So in regards to what DUAB does in that process, today I would ask DUAB, assuming DUAB does approve the suspension of the loan payments, I would ask that DUAB also make a recommendation to the State Board of Finance that we also extend the term on those loans. The idea with extending the term on those loans is that we don't get to the end of the suspension of payments and suddenly have very large balloon payments, or we have a significant increase in our overall loan payments to account for the shorter term. Really what we're trying to accomplish would be to take the loan payments starting in July of 2020 and essentially move those out to be started back up again in January of 2025. That's the term. 54 months is the term that the statute allows for this process. So we would be asking to extend the term on these loans by 54 months and kind of relocate those payments. And then again, as Eric said, Geary Schools will restart those payments and continue to work on paying off those loans.
And essentially, what we are doing here is we're going to pull forward some of those funds that would be freed up when the loans were paid off to make critical investments today in the infrastructure of the school corporation. You know we have a number of needs, and we just do not have the resources, or it's clear that there are not the resources available financially to be able to address many of those needs. And the longer those remain unaddressed, the more problematic they become, and certainly the more expensive they become to address. And so I think in looking at this, what makes this a wise choice is that it gives us that opportunity to make those investments as early as we can, and therefore preserve the capital infrastructure that we have, which will also, I think, enable us to continue to turn the financial picture of the school corporation by making the school corporation a more attractive option for those students who maybe have chosen other options in the district, by being able to offer better buildings, nicer facilities, and just have a more robust offering from a campus perspective. Are there other questions regarding the issue of suspending the loan payments? I do want to take them in sequentially in order, and so we'll first speak to suspending the loan payments. Are there other questions regarding whether we should suspend those loan payments or what that mechanically will entail? Yes, Paul.
As I discussed earlier about ensuring that MGT utilizes local businesses and minority-owned businesses first and foremost before we move on, is that something that needs to be made as part of the motion, that we ensure that we're part of that process, or if we authorize it, do they have then just the authority to do that, to go out and get the bids however they so see?
Yeah, it's certainly something we could incorporate into our motion. It wouldn't be into the motion of whether to suspend the loans. It would be more on the approval of the plan for the expenditure of the funds. What I would say, I would caution us against perhaps requiring them to come back only to present that to us before they can start moving, because obviously the summer is here and there's a number of projects which we'll be able to take advantage of the summer months, certainly before school is back in session, that it makes sense to get started on. What I think I would prefer to do, if this is if the board is comfortable with this, is charge Courtney with working with the team to develop that policy and develop that plan, and then come back to the board and keep us advised of how that is going, and then continue to monitor that along the way.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions about the suspension of loan payments? With that, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we suspend the loan payments on the following Gary Community School Corporation Common School Fund loans for the period of July 2020 through and including December 2024. Those loans include loans number A3000, A3001, A3002, A3003, A3005, A3006, A3007, A3008, and A3009. I would also add to my motion that we would recommend to the State Board of Finance that the term of these loans be extended by 54 months, which is an equal number of months to the length of the loan payment suspension.
Great, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Could I'll just send the motion. Could I clarify why there was the A3004 was omitted from it, just so we could have clarification going forward of that?
Absolutely. I figured somebody would ask that. A3004 was a loan that was approved by DUAB and State Board of Finance at the start of June 2017. We had placed restrictions on that loan that indicated that the loan needed to be repaid shortly after they received their June property tax draw. Due to that, the financial specialist that was on the ground at the time actually never drew down that loan at all. So even though it was approved and we have a loan agreement out there for A3004, there was no draw on it, therefore there is no payment back on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Courtney. Other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, would you call the roll, Courtney?
Paul Joyce?
Yes.
Wes Bennett?
Yes.
Tracy Brown?
Yes.
Rebecca Kubacki?
Yes.
And Justin McAdam?
Yes.
5-0.
Motion is adopted 5-0. The next item that we need to address is the approval of the plan for expending the funds for the suspended loan payments. Before we move to taking a motion on that, is there any discussion or questions regarding the plan that MGT put forward for those funds?
I would just reiterate that we utilize local Gary-owned businesses first and foremost before we start moving outside of Gary. After Gary, let's go to Indiana. Then we can look forward, but let's try to do much local as possible.
Understood. We can add that language to the plan as it is now and incorporate that in a meaningful way.
Thank you very much.
This is Rebecca. I think we want to make sure that we also include women and minority businesses.
Sure.
Yes. And Paul, I do think we could add that piece to the motion if it is a directive to first look at one, then the other. I think that will be fine, as long as that does not require them to come back to the board for approval each time.
I just think it's very important for the community as a whole, so I would appreciate that to be added.
We can do that.
Amy, real quick, I know you guys surveyed a number of community groups and you worked closely with a lot of stakeholders. Did you receive did anyone push back and say that we shouldn't be doing this, or was the response generally this is what we should be doing, and it was more a question of how to spend the dollars?
Yeah, I did not receive any pushback that dollars should be spent. There was a large number of individuals who wanted to focus expenditures at Westside as kind of the flagship school. So, but there was no pushback on whether or not dollars should be spent. Mm-hmm. Just as a follow-up to Mr. Joyce's earlier question, the response on the playground is a Gary-based company. So that is certainly looking at giving that appreciation to using Gary companies. I think we can easily incorporate the language as you suggested to the plan and lean on our partnership with the Chamber of Commerce in Gary to help distribute to Gary businesses RFPs as they are made available.
Thank you. One other question, Amy. Obviously, the roof at Westside High School has been a topic of much discussion and obviously much concern. I know it is one that your team has wanted to get to for a long time, but because of the $8 million price tag, have not been able to address it with a full replacement. Can you speak to how the plan addresses that? If I recall from what I saw in the materials, it's actually something you plan to work on beginning in phase 1. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. In phase 1, we would target the area most in need, the roof area most in need that is above the small gym. This would be part of 4 different phases. So we would address that specific spot where we know there is a critical need to redo that part of the roof. So I don't think we intend to do the entire roof all at once. Obviously, the $8 million is not available all at once, so we'll spread that out over time.
And so at the end, we'll have a fully replaced roof at Westside High School. Is that the expectation?
That is the intent. Mm-hmm. Yes.
On the one other topic, Paul, I'll come back to you in just a moment. One other topic that's come up a little bit is the pool at the high school. I know that has been out of commission for several years. I believe that was on the list. Could you speak to when you plan to address that and what you think that will look like? Yes.
The pool could be addressed in a single phase, and we do have that in, I'm fearful of saying a specific phase and getting it wrong, but it's maybe phase 3 or 4. Apologize, I need to.
Phase 3.
Thank you. So yes, we intend to tackle that in phase 3.
So that would be next summer.
That's right.
Does that mean it would be ready for the 2021-2022 school year?
I hesitate to say how quickly that could be executed.
Okay.
Ideally, sure.
Okay. Fantastic. Mr. Joyce, you had a question?
This is going to be a wild suggestion, especially coming from me, but Could we possibly look at if there is available, if any CARES fund money that might be utilized for something like this? Because it does create a health problem whenever you have leaky roofs that don't allow proper social distancing within the school corporation itself, and where because of wet floors or buckets and different things that are going around there. So I think there are or could be a possibility. I wouldn't say that there is automatically, and I think it might be questions that have to be asked, but it may be something that, like I say, may need to be addressed currently, just so it doesn't increase the health problems as goes going forward at that school. So it's just a thought. So.
Yeah, I'll weigh in on that. It's an interesting thought. I appreciate it. I can tell you, I look at CARES money and ways to expend those funds every day, trying to get creative.
Yeah.
That's a new one.
I know that's crazy coming from me, trust me. But you know, you do have to social distance. It is something that is very much out there. And when you have buckets in different places, and you have wet floors, and you have this one, it gets in the way of doing that. So I don't know. I think it's just something to explore.
Yeah, I will pull on that thread. I like the idea, and no idea when it comes to CARES money, and not just CARES money, but what are we trying to accomplish, and what are the funding sources, and related to CARES money, how can we leverage the CARES money as best as possible? So,
right.
One final question. I know that you've had several conversations with the mayor and his team regarding the use of these funds. And I know of particular concern to the mayor, in addition to taking care of our existing school buildings, is also trying to address some of the vacant buildings. Could you touch on that just briefly, how you plan to address vacant buildings, and maybe when you might expect to address some of those?
Absolutely. And we have had ongoing conversations with Mayor Prince, and that will continue as we enter into the phases, and we know there'll be some fluidity within those phases. He will be a regular contact of ours of where we're at. You go back to the spirit of 1065, building demolition was a major piece of that. And then you compare that to the feedback we got from community members, parents, teachers, administrators, community leaders, elected officials. Building demolition did not come up high on the survey. But in our conversation with Mayor Prince, we have said and pledge and are true to that we recognize how important building demolition is to the community, to the city, and Gary Community Schools. We're partners in this endeavor. I'll take a tangent and say concurrent to 1065, the School Improvement Fund, is we have been trying to divest ourselves of those abandoned buildings. We're getting ready to, we're coming to the end of a phase or initiative that has put those buildings back on the market, and we will divest ourselves of some of those buildings. We'll have some announcements coming soon. And in the plan, you'll see, starting in phase 2, a major component in phase 2 is demolition costs for something. We're leaving the something to be determined, because if we can divest ourselves of those buildings concurrently, then we don't want to lock ourselves into saying we're going to knock down and abate and demolish a building if we can divest ourselves of it sooner. So starting phase 2, there's a significant dollar amount dedicated to abatement and demolition. And then in each subsequent phase, it just says ongoing. And as we communicate that to the mayor, there's an understanding that there's fluidity to this. There's the process that we're in partnership with the city of divesting these buildings. And so you'll see it, it's there, and is supportive of how we're undertaking that.
Great, thank you for that detail. Any other questions regarding the plan for expending these funds?
Mr. Chairman, I have just one quick question.
Yes, please.
Eric, can I assume correctly that these are not necessarily engineers' estimates, but are rough estimates, and design and engineering still has to take place on most of these things?
That is correct. And some of these projects are significant. Some would not require an architect engineer. But yes, on the ones, their best guesses based on industry standards and past practice and examples from similar projects.
Thank you.
Yep.
So with that, I mean, and I think this was noted in the documents you provided, we should expect some flexibility in how the timing of these projects and maybe the mix of projects as we see how the costs come in. I suppose if they come in less, you'll be able to add projects or pull projects forward.
Mm-hmm.
But if they come in at a higher cost, it may limit the number of projects that you initially proposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move we approve the School Improvement Fund plan as presented and request updates from Gary Community School Corporation on the plan on a quarterly basis or more frequently if modifications are made to the plan.
Thank you, Wes. We have a motion. I would amend that motion in light of the discussion that we've had to also require, I would offer an amendment that to also require that in hiring or in bidding out these projects that NGT look first to minority and women-owned businesses in the community there in Gary and the Lake County area, and then also beyond that scope in the Indiana and national space as well before moving to other contractors.
Mr. Chairman, I would withdraw my motion and restate if I may.
Yes, please.
I would move that we approve the School Improvement Fund plan as presented and request updates from Gary Community School Corporation on the plan on a quarterly basis or more frequently if modifications are made to the plan, and in addition, request that Gary Community School Corporation seek bidders from local community as well as minority and women businesses to carry out as much of the plan as possible.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Courtney, would you call the roll?
I apologize. I didn't hear who seconded it.
Rebecca.
Rebecca did.
Thank you. Just taking notes here. All right. Paul Joyce?
Yes.
Wes Bennett?
Yes.
Tracy Brown?
Yes.
Rebecca Kubacki?
Yes.
And Justin McAdam?
Yes.
5-0.
Motion is approved 5-0. We do have a couple other administrative type items to deal with regarding this issue. Courtney, could you remind us of what those are and just outline those for us?
Yes, absolutely. So we actually already took care of one in terms of the regular reporting back on the plan that was included in the motion. The other item, though, had to do with the statutory requirement that DUAB approve all expenditures from the School Improvement Fund. So I will put out kind of some thoughts I've had on how this could work, and then certainly would appreciate any other thoughts from the board. And then we will utilize these thoughts to kind of pull together an official policy that both DUAB and the team can utilize to ensure that we're following this statute appropriately. So in terms of some of the thoughts I've had on this, I would recommend that Gary Schools or the team would provide DUAB with a monthly claim docket on any expenditures from the fund. Have that come before DUAB at its regular monthly meetings and have DUAB approve that on a monthly basis. Another item here would be along with this, as we go through and have expenditures out of the fund, I would also ask the team to provide a follow-up document that compares actual costs to these estimates that have been included in the plan, so we can continue to compare and see where we fall out according to the control document. One thing kind of behind the scenes, while we're talking specifically about approving expenditures, I also wanted to remind the board that we do have requirements on approving contracts. So statutorily, contracts 30,000 or above have to come to DUAB. Right now, you all have delegated 30,000 to 250,000 to me to review and then report back to you. And then anything 250,000 or above would come to DUAB. There is an exception in the statute that indicates that maintenance contracts do not apply to that threshold or do not apply to that process. I would recommend that we would make it clear that any contracts that would be being paid out of this school improvement fund that would fall in this 30,000 or above parameter, that they would come to DUAB for approval, that we would not consider those to be maintenance contracts, that they would be more specifically contracts that do require DUAB approval. A question I would pose to the board on that is, are you comfortable with the existing thresholds for kind of my level of approval versus a full board approval? I think in thinking through that question, I would also ask that you consider some timing issues that may be associated with getting these contracts signed and keeping things moving on the project, either from the standpoint of the original contract or then also from a change order perspective. So kind of a balance between transparency as well as ensuring we're not creating a situation where either we're all getting together on a weekly basis, even though we have been recently, or a situation where things are held up because DUAB hasn't had that opportunity to meet. The other item I would include or would throw a recommendation out on is the statute also does allow Geary schools to utilize other funds for projects within the plan and then ultimately reimburse those other funds from the school improvement plan. I would just recommend that we would include in the policy that if Geary Schools wants to go down that road at all, that DUAB would have to officially approve that project and the expenditure of the other funds first before they would come back to us after the fact and ask for reimbursement. It's not a situation that I anticipate in any way, shape, or form. I'm just trying to think through how can we best develop a policy that provides the right guardrails for everybody involved. So those are kind of my thoughts and recommendations, but I'm happy to hear other thoughts on this as well.
Courtney, we have, and I do think we should discuss a few of these points here today. Would it make sense to, we have a July meeting, would it make sense to take some comments today and then bring that back, bring a written recommendation back at that point that lays out the policy?
Yes, absolutely. That would be great.
Okay. Paul, do you have a?
Yeah, my only recommendation right now would be I would stay close to the procedures that we currently use, understanding the plans and the parameters of the improvement plan that we just made a motion on. And after, this is more than a short-term issue. It's a long-term going on. So rather than to create the policy too quickly, let's see some experience level going on through the fund to see what is actually transpiring, to see what kind of activity and levels we would need to participate in. Maybe in July come with a preliminary plan, and then maybe in the next quarter, revisit to see how that preliminary plan is working, to see if that's the long-term plan we want to go with. Because this is definitely just an uncharted territory of where we're going down right now.
Yeah, but we haven't managed or overseen too many capital expenditures to date, not at this point, certainly. Eric or Amy, any thoughts you want to offer as we think about this? Eric.
I'm going to create a new program that as soon as somebody starts talking directly into the computer, it's going to automatically unmute them.
Unmute.
And then when we stop talking, it's going to mute us. It happens to me every day on meetings.
Mr. Chairman.
Eric, go ahead. Well,
is Eric here? Yeah, if Eric's there, go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with what Courtney laid out. I spent some time walking through that concurrently to her and came up with many of the same ideas. I would emphasize the control document, and that's a term I just made up, but I think it's relevant, that in our quarterly or monthly reporting to DUAB, there will be the proposed cost or the estimated cost, the timeline, the project itself, when it started, the progress to date, and the cost to date, the variance from budget. So I think we're going to, as Paul said, I think we're going to see this unfold, but we'll have a document where everything's in one place to reference. The other thing, and I don't have an answer, is the change orders. I think the change orders are more of an issue than the contracts. I think we'll enter into a contract and then we'll see what the thresholds are and approval process wrapped around that. And we don't know what we don't know, but the change orders could be fluid and rapid, and some flexibility wrapped around that, I think, is the only thing I think we need to think about. It's different than the contract itself.
Thank you. Wes, you had a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're heading in the right direction. Everything I've heard so far from Courtney to Paul and Eric, I think are on point. I think Eric has obviously been through this more than once when he talks about the change order process. I have too, and so those things can eat you up pretty quickly. I agree with Paul. We need to kind of set some parameters. I think Courtney's done an excellent job in setting the table, if you will, for those parameters. And then as we see the need for any modifications, we can do that going forward. So I think we've got a good base here, a good foundation for moving forward. Because as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, capital projects are a totally different animal than day-to-day operations.
Yes. Thank you, Wes.
Justin, I think you timed out a little bit here. Or did I just time out?
It was Justin.
Okay, I wasn't sure. So while he's jumping back in, actually, one thing, kind of talking to the transparency piece, when it's Amy, could you talk a little bit about some of the plans that you all have? I know you talked a little bit about the signs that you would have out at the different buildings, but I think you've also talked a little bit about having some reporting on the webpage as well. And I don't know that we touched on that too much, just trying to talk through how the community will also, in addition to DUAB reviewing this, how the community will also have some additional transparency.
So on the webpage, our hope is to also include the control document that Eric mentioned, where we're updating individual projects, progress toward completion, expenditures on each of those projects, and our anticipated time frame for the projects. Our intent is to give all of that detail through the webpage, and then share through social media that updates have been made to the webpage and direct people toward understanding that kind of detail around each project.
The only thing I would add to that, we'll do it certainly by a project basis. I think the underlying on top of all of that is every dollar that comes in is accounted for in a project. And so it'd be easy to just look at the projects and not know the total. We'll start with every dollar coming in and where those dollars go, and then it flows to projects.
Thank you, and Courtney, thanks for pitch hitting there while I lost my internet connection. What I was going to say is that with the board's consent, I will commend this back to Courtney to bring back to us at the regular July meeting, so that we can formally approve this process and have a written plan for how we will address this. With that, I'm going to move to our next item of business. We have just one final item to deal with today, and that is the consideration of the food services agreement for the Gary Community School Corporation. Eric, I believe you're presenting on this topic.
I am. Thank you. Yes, so in your packet, we'll just walk through the summary and I'll answer any questions you have related to it. We are ending a 5-year agreement with Sodexo Magic for food and nutrition services. That contract technically ends next week. We issued, MGT and GCSC put together an RFP with close consultation of IDOE in that preparation process. This is a process that gets a lot of oversight at the state and federal level. The RFP was released in April, closed in May. We had several companies interested by taking out the documents, and we had a pre-bid meeting, and several folks attended that, but ultimately only Sodexo Magic was the only company that submitted a response to the RFP. Their proposal is similar in scope and terms. It's a 5-year agreement. It's a 1-year contract with 4 one-year renewals, with some out clauses for performance along the way. The contract is essentially the same. In fact, the contract in your packet was just built off of the existing contract that expires next month. If you look at the costs, and we jump to costs right away, the performance issues and the services provided are essentially the same. Sodexo has done fine. We're pleased overall with their performance. I would give them props for how they have responded during COVID. They have gone and done exceptional work during the time that we've had delivering meals since we had to close down in March. So performance has not been an issue over the last 5 years with Sodexo Magic. If you look at their budgeted costs, and use that term deliberately, budgeted, do go down over the 5-year term of the proposed contract. A lot of that has to do with enrollment. If you look 5 years ago, the enrollment was higher than it is today. What really matters is it's a unit cost calculation. And I say budgeted, I come back to that term. These are anticipated or expected costs based on what we know today. I will tell you, I hope these costs go up dramatically. And the reason I say that is if the costs go up dramatically, it means our enrollment is increased dramatically. It's the unit cost would stay the same, and we're just multiplying the unit cost by more participants, which would be a great thing. So these are budgeted costs. So what really matters is that per unit cost. We made that a firm number, and Sodexo met that firm number. The guaranteed return is the amount of money that is collected through the food and nutrition program that is then set aside for capital enhancements, upgrades, repairs, or new equipment. And so there's a guaranteed return. That's the term in the industry. And it's a little over $500,000 per year, $2.5 million over the 5 years. It's almost exactly the same over the 5-year time frame as what Sodexo committed to in the existing contract that's expiring. The last thing on the costs and the fees is Sodexo has proposed to lower their administrative fee 21%. So in that per meal calculation is acceptable administrative costs. Those have decreased. The savings to Gary Community Schools is about $40,000 a year, or about $200,000 over a 5-year period. And last is the IDOE. Not only were they very involved in developing the RFP, reviewing the RFP, participating. They didn't participate in the pre-bid meeting, but they took the evaluations and then the notes from that. And then we did the rubric on an evaluation, even though there was one. IDOE did review that and has approved the selection for Sodexo Magic. Following that summary is the actual contract itself. Again, it was built off of the existing contract that has worked very well. And last thing I would say is again, just to summarize, the performance of Sodexo over the last 5 years has been good, and we recommend to continue on with them and expect that service to maintain. Questions I can answer.
Great, thank you, Eric. Questions from board members regarding this contract or food services more generally? Eric, just one question. Oh, yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Representative Smith.
Yes. Speaking for the community, I've heard nothing but good responses about Sodexo, and I think the community supports this contract.
Thank you, Representative Smith. That's helpful context. Eric, one question I was going to ask is, I believe you've looked at doing food services in-house. could you speak a little bit about that? And obviously these kinds of contracts cost a lot of money. And so, you know, it's an area of potential savings. Can you speak to that in this instance?
Yeah, absolutely. And we started down the path of a calculation or a comparison of bringing food services in-house in August of 2019. And one of the activities, initiatives we took on during the 2019-20 school year was the analysis of bringing that food services in-house. After all of the analysis was completed, it made sense to continue with a third-party provider. And we didn't have, Sodexo wasn't queued up for that. It was just a third-party provider made more sense, both economically, but service level-wise. And some historical context is probably important in that analysis, in that community schools had some issues in prior years with food service and nutrition and payments and delivery. And so there is no margin of error in Gary Community Schools for delivering food and nutrition services. There was not, the confidence level wasn't high enough to bring it in-house. And so the decision was made not just on cost, but on performance. And it does make sense on both those fronts, cost and performance, to continue as a third-party provider.
And I assume that's something you'll continue to evaluate as you go along. And I noticed that the contract is really 5 one-year contracts. And so you have the ability to continue to look at that issue. Yeah,
it's a three-legged stool. It's cost, it's performance, and then it's the difference between a third-party provider and bringing that service in-house. And at some point, it may make sense the analysis may prove out, but for now, it does not.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
I have one. Is it standard to have one-year contracts?
You know, I don't know for other school districts. This is, again, I guess I could look at what Sodexo proposed, and they're a major provider, and they're comfortable with the 5 one-year agreements. We're comfortable with that. It gives us the ability to hold them accountable in a meaningful way.
Actually, let me also jump in on this. This is actually a federal regulation that the contract would be written in this way, that it's a one-year contract with up to 4 extensions. So the contract we've been working under was from prior to emergency management that we just last summer approved the last possible extension on that. But yeah, this is a federal requirement to do the contract this way.
Yeah, and that's required. It's 5 years is the maximum. You can't extend it beyond 5.
Yep.
Great. Are there other questions?
I just wanted to add, thank you, Courtney, for mentioning that. I talked to the director of school nutrition, and her team was very involved in this process, and it does meet all the federal requirements, so they're comfortable with this.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate the engagement with DOE on this topic and with Gary generally. Goes a long way. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion. We are running late on time.
I move that we approve the contract between Gary Community School Corporation and Sodexo Magic for food services for the period of July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021 at an estimated cost of $3,698,350.
Great, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Courtney, would you call the roll?
Paul Joyce?
Yes.
Wes Bennett?
Yes.
Tracy Brown?
Yes.
Rebecca Kubacki?
Yes.
And Justin McAdam?
Yes.
5-0.
Motion carries 5-0. That concludes our scheduled business for today. Is there any new business to come before the board today?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, if we can keep it brief, Dr. Smith.
Yes, I'll keep that in mind. Thank you. My first point is relative to what you did with the School Improvement Fund expenditures, giving a preference to Gary businesses, to minorities, and to women. Gary Community School Corporation had that as a policy prior to the takeover, but under MGT that has not been adhered to in the past. The same provision that you have for the School Improvement Fund, I would hope that there would be an item on the agenda for July for discussion, because there are a lot of other items that MGT is purchasing that Gary people are not being given consideration. And with the fact that they're bringing a lot of outside persons into the community who have no sensitivity to Gary, even at the building level, with T-shirts and promotional items and trophies and stuff, the money is going outside the community rather than inside the community. And certainly the whole is the sum total of its parts. And Gary Community School Corporation is a part of Gary and a big spender for Gary. And so I would ask that that be placed on the agenda for July. And then the other thing, I just want to go on the record. I made a suggestion with the interview that MGT conducted with me relative to Roosevelt, that we needed as a transition to create a wing in Westside to capture all those Roosevelt students. When Gary has merged schools before, Emerson Performance School of Arts was merged with Word High School. They created a wing so that then they transitioned those people once they got there and they were more comfortable in that setting, then they merged the two together. I think that ought to be the strategy to capture these Roosevelt students, because we're looking at $1.6 million or more, and we need that money. We need that student population, and I don't think that suggestion that I share with them is being heard. And so I want to go on record of sharing with you so it becomes part of the minute.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I think both your recommendations are well taken. I'll take the second one first. I think we definitely need to capture as many of the Edison students as we can. And I know that that is something the team has been focused on. And I think we will certainly work with them to take your suggestions under consideration. I know they're a long way down the road on that, but we'll continue to talk through that with them and see how they are faring. And on your first suggestion, very much appreciate that comment, and we will work with the team to better understand those policies on a more district-wide basis to understand how they're operationalized today and whether there are gaps and areas that we should look to improve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Justin, I would jump in on two very, very quick updates, and this is only because you, as a board, may read about these things in the next few days, and there are things we've talked about in the past, but just give you a very brief update.
Yeah, please.
We did apply, Gary Community Schools did apply for tax anticipation warrants. It's a short-term borrowing mechanism through the Indiana Bond Bank. The reason is property tax payments were delayed. The governor gave that order, which is a great thing. And so to cover our debt service payments, which are funded by property tax collections, we didn't know what property tax collections would look like. So we applied for and were approved for tax anticipation warrants, which gives us that coverage. We will receive yesterday $3.4 million at a 1.89% interest rate. Our property tax collection did come in stronger than expected, so we may not need to have that tax anticipation warrant money at all, which would be a great thing. But just so everybody knows, you did approve this in a prior meeting. We did participate in it. We did receive funds. We will pay those funds back as quickly as possible with a minimal amount of interest incurred. And the second thing is you approved the initiative to do some bond refunding. This will be the third time you approved that. That bond refunding that you recently approved closed or went to market yesterday. It will close next week. The anticipated savings was $500,000 over the life of the bonds at about a 7% return. They actually closed or were sold at a savings of $700,000 with a return of 9%. So much better than expected, and the 3 bond refundings we've done have saved Gary Community Schools over $2 million over the last 2 years.
Great, thank you, Eric. Dr. McNulty, if I could ask you real quick, you know, in light of the discussion around looking for minority and women-owned businesses, looking to hire them and ensure that we are engaging them in contracts and other functions of the school corporation. Could you speak a little bit, just in light of all of the events that have been occurring here over the last month regarding the George Floyd situation and sort of just the cultural awakening, I think, or awareness to some of the challenges faced by the African American community in this country. Could you speak a little bit to how you and the district are engaging on that topic right now? I know you've been doing some work in that area.
Yeah, we have posted many things about that. We've tried to engage in some meaningful conversations, healthy conversations with students through our social emotional platforms with our social workers. We have attended, many of the staff have attended, and administrators, the peaceful protests that happened at City Hall. So, you know, we acknowledge that was is and continues to be a tragic event, so that we are trying to encourage our students to peacefully voice their opinions about that situation, and we will continue to educate them in the classroom about that as well. We did discuss last night at the advisory board adding a piece in our curriculum for Black history as we move forward K through 12.
Great, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to that? Yeah, I didn't see the presence of MGT or a whole lot of faculty at those at those peaceful demonstrations, and I was at both of them, the ones that were held at City Hall, but that's another issue. I think it's important for MGT to go back and revisit the plan that Gary had in place before MGT took over, which was the infusion of African American history into the curriculum. And one of the things that has to happen is the training of faculty, because if you're teaching reading, you can use literature that's associated with the Black awareness, with the Black history, to infuse history into the reading curriculum. If we're talking about science, many of the discoveries, many of the inventions were by African American people, because African American people were doing the work. And so that can be infused. It can be infused in math with problems and so forth. So if there's a concerted effort to do that, then we will begin to address some of the needs of our children, because when we study Black history, it's motivational for our young people, and it deals with their self-esteem, their ego, so that they feel like they can do better for motivation. It brings it home and makes it more realistic for them. I think it's also for the few minorities, the major groups, the European Americans, it helps with teaching tolerance. I just think that since MGT is probably going to have a 2-year contract, that they need to begin to do that infusion plan or create a new one that would address the needs of our population.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I appreciate that, your perspective on that. I appreciate that your kind words. Is there any other new business to come before the committee today? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, how you doing? How you